I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. This is awesome. We're so excited to hear from you today. Let me introduce you. Michael Steele is the executive principal from Nashville Public Schools, one of our favorite towns, super exciting town. He's going to talk to us today about URA leadership. Transform yourself if you want others to follow. So this is an exciting discussion we're going to be having with you today. We're going to give you the presenter screen, Michael.
Okay.
So you can share on your own. You can share your webcam. I'm going to make you presenter.
Did I get it?
Yeah, we can see it.
All right, fantastic. Well, hello, my fellow Tennessee and Kentucky educators. I hope you're excited today. I've been listening in a little bit. I wanted to talk to you about a few things. And really what I did is when I was asked to present, I had a 30-minute time slot. And I said, well, could we get an hour? Because I really want to get through some things quick, but I want to answer questions because for those of you in Tennessee for certain, and maybe even some of those of you that live in Southern Kentucky, you're familiar with Stratford High School. I mean, when I got here 11 years ago, Stratford was considered one of the worst high schools in Tennessee. It was definitely on a list that the state keeps of the most dangerous schools in Tennessee. And so obviously I had a mission. I'll tell you about the story a little bit about how I even ended up at Stratford because I hadn't actually applied for Stratford. But what I really want to do is I want to encourage you to ask questions. You know, I was listening to the other presentations and they were all really good, a lot of information quickly. But I really kind of think about, you know, things probably aren't ever going to go back to being the same, but they are going to go back. And at the end of the day, we have to be able to identify what kind of leader we are, what kind of leadership we're offering to those people who follow us, to those people who want to follow us, to those people who don't want to follow us, and we have a mission to get them to follow us in order to see our organizations thrive, our schools, our districts, our offices, or whatever organization you're a part of. If you want to see them thrive, you're going to have to really figure out what this means. And so I just kind of want to go through my slide and my slideshow real quick, and just I want you to be able to ask as many questions as you want. And let me see here. Is it changing slides? I'm saying to the next slide. There we go. Real quick background and bio of me. When I first got to Stratford, it had a 59% graduation rate.
We lost your audio.
No, we didn't. I was just letting them read that a little bit. I wasn't going to just read the whole thing. You know, when you think about a 59% graduation rate, and I'll get into that a little bit also in a little bit, you're not thinking about 41% of your students not doing work. I mean, if you are, you shouldn't be thinking that, because it wasn't the students not doing work, it was the adults not doing work. Any school in the country that has a 59% graduation rate certainly has to take a look at the leadership and the principal and the things that they're doing. As you can see, I spent time in the Marine Corps, 4 years in the Marine Corps. I served in law enforcement for 10 years. At the end of that career, I was a school resource officer, which really, you know, projected me into wanting to be a principal, school principal. So here I am, 11 years at Stratford STEM magnet school, and I couldn't be happier. I invented URA leadership because I kept seeing too much failed leadership. And someone says, well, what's URA mean? URA is just a Marine Corps term I made up. You can call your leadership model whatever you want to call it. URA leadership is just what I call mine, just to change it up. As I sat in my doctoral program, I listened to all these professors talk about transformational and servant and emotionally intelligent and transactional leadership. And it just always occurred to me that you cannot be a great leader unless you can encompass all those things. You cannot just paint yourself into a corner and say, well, I'm a servant leader, I'm not really a transformational leader, because there are somebody's out there that wants you and needs you to be transformational, while others need for you to be a servant. You have to be able to, if you really care about your leadership and what you're doing in your profession and in your personal life, you're going to want to be able to, well, the way I look at it, to be excellent in all those areas, but certainly above average in all those areas. So we don't allow fear and conformity and those kind of things to influence our leadership. And we definitely, one thing I definitely do not do is tolerate excuses, regardless of what the excuse may be. There's a solution. So I'd rather hear the solution than the excuse. So I want you to be able to jump in at any time and ask, interrupt me, ask me about any question you have about the school, what we did, what we didn't do, what we still continue to do during these virtual times to keep our staff highly motivated, highly dedicated, and while we check in with them on the supports that they need. Because I guarantee you, every one of us has at one point sat back in isolation and thought, this is uncomfortable. At least the very minimum, this is uncomfortable, be having to stay home for 2 weeks and not really being able to interact, not being able to go to the store, the movies, to the restaurant. At some point, every one of us has thought, well, this is at least uncomfortable. While other people are very seriously struggling emotionally with the current situation and climate that we're in. And hopefully there's an end in sight, but it's going to be very, very important to check in on all levels. So someone will say to me, well, what do you think the most important thing to your success is? And I would say, well, it's developing and establishing strong and intentional and purposeful relationships. And you'll hear me use those words, intentional and purposeful, a lot, because that's really what we're talking about. And so I say, well, that's true. And that's in relationship building is key. And if you're a teacher or a principal, you'll know that that's true. But then I ask you this question, especially, well, principals and teachers alike. How come it's so hard to do? How come people, let me rephrase that. How come people have such a difficult time developing and establishing great relationships with their students? So you got to kind of think about that in terms of, you know, how successful or unsuccessful you are during your journey trying to run a school. So having said that, I want to go into some information here. I want you to read this real quick. Read this next slide and tell me what you think. And I really would like to hear voices. If you have, if you can unmute and tell me what you think. Tell me what sticks out to you, what stands out to you about being the tip of the spear.
This is Leilani again, Michael. I'm waiting for comments. You know, you guys can everyone that's on the call right now can hit chat. You can also just put it in there. I can read it out if you want to just hit chat. That's easier. Or you can hit questions, comment in questions, however you want to do it. And if no one comments, you know I will. Don't be shy though. Come on, people.
Well, you've taken time to be on this. There's no really place to be shy. Be intentional, be purposeful, unmute or chat or type something in the chat. What stands out to you? Because when I told you on the part of this journey is that you're going to have to take a look at yourself and figure out from where you are, from yourself, what are you doing or not doing to be a highly effective leader in your building or even in your personal life? What are you doing or not doing? And so I created Tip of the Spear years ago. Tip of the Spear is something we refer to in the military. I kind of took it to a little bit different level. But tell me what you think, what stands out to you in your life or your profession about this quote.
Well, Michael, if no one else is going to say anything, what I want to say, just as learning counselor, just being a researcher for the last, I don't know, 15 years of my life, looking at a lot of data coming out of the education sector, I have to tell you, the posturing of most administrations is not, I am a servant to people. They don't start that way in many instances in a lot of administrators' mindset. I'm not being critical. I'm just saying it's just sort of it's a little bit of a cultural thing. It's like, we're running this. We all have, serious degrees and serious amounts of knowledge in our studies of what we're supposed to be talking about. And we're administering to people who they're supposed to do what we tell them to do. So what happened when quarantines happened and a lot of people were opting out and you had AWOL kids and a lot of parents going, you know what, I don't like the way you're doing it, I'm out. I'm going to go to an online school, private school, I'm out. Or I'm just going to homeschool, I'm going to figure this out online. Learning council, we saw a phenomenal increase in consumer behavior. We watched the consumer markets really picked up, right? Like $1 billion more in the quarantine period, late March through June, July timeframe than we've ever seen. And consumers were already out spending all school districts put together on professional grade materials in digital, right? Like, I'm not talking about apps. That's not inclusive of apps, and it's not inclusive of ebooks, right? It's just all the different things that you can find, and online collections, libraries, and things like that. So really, the American public started to say, we're not the servant of you. We're free agents on a scale that we've never seen before. We're talking between 20 and 40% of students AWOL or opt out. And a lot of districts have lost enrollment going into the fall, like at a majestic level. So what you're talking about here is a shift to a different sort of mindset, which I think is appropriate. I mean, I think all leaders should think this way, but the fact is, and I'm not trying to be really critical here, but they don't. They really don't.
Well, okay, so I'm talking about the totality of leadership and the person you are. So in a few minutes, I'll share a slide that talks about if you've got a problem or if you've got a challenge, that problem is yours. That challenge is yours. It doesn't belong to anybody else. Nobody else is at fault for you perceiving a challenge or for you having a problem personally or professionally. So I'll talk about the COVID situation. So you talk about being intentional, being a servant in your leadership as part of being a servant. So I have, every time a student in mine, I've got 750 students, I've got about 65 employees. I get an email every time one of my students submits an assignment, every single time. So you can imagine with all the different classes we have got going on virtually, I get an email every time a student submits an assignment. And right now we've got about a 75% attendance rate, which I think is really good considering. And I do everything in my power to answer every one of those emails. And now I can't get to all of them all the time, but one thing I do is I make sure that if I see the same child submit 5 things, I definitely respond to one of them. I may not respond to all 5 of her submissions for different classes, but I'm going to respond to one of them. So she's going to go back and say, hey, my principal is here. He's alive. He cares. She might even go the next mile and go tell her parents, who might tell 10 other people, that, hey, the principal's involved. So you can go to that school and you have attention and access to the principal. I do the same thing this is besides trying to visit each classroom on a daily basis for my teacher's sake, to make sure I'm visiting and even interacting or playing along with whatever the subject may be. I'm trying to be intentionally focused on that. And so you're right. So the vast majority, and I'm going to be generous and say only 50%, but it's probably a lot more than that, have no idea what I'm talking about when I say you have to be able to build capacity, to build relationships with people that are lasting and intentional and purposeful, not just check the box that you think you build good relationships. And I'll give you a good example. Had a principal come to me about a month ago, and he said, hey, I had been mentoring this other principal, and he had been thriving. He lost 159 pounds. He got licensed in administration, got promoted to assistant principal. He said, this other principal came to me and said, hey, can you help me do what you did for him? And I said, sure. Are you ready to go on this journey though? He said, well, what does that mean? I said, I need you to be up at 5 o'clock in the morning at the gym with me at 5 o'clock. He said, well, we don't have to be, I'm in middle school. We don't have to be at work until like 8:55. I said, I'm not clear on that, what that means. I need for you, if you want to be on this journey with me, I need you to be intentional about being at the gym, because really what he wanted to do was get in better shape. But I said, I need for you to be at the gym with me at 5 o'clock in the morning. And I never heard back from him at that point. So I'm not the kind of person to let something go. So I waited about a month, and I saw him at another principal meeting, and I said, never heard from you. And then here come the excuses rolling in. So when you look at tip of the spear and you decide what you want to be, whether it's in your personal life or professional life. Now, when I do this in person, this is about a 4-hour presentation. I do it in person. I bring students with me, and we really talk about the whole atmosphere, the way the whole thing looks. You know, are you intentional about your parenting? Are you intentional about your marriage? Or you're being a brother or sister? And what I tell people to do, this is a very good, quick, you talk about research and you talk about response. This is a very quick way to determine whether you're uncomfortable with this. And what I tell the group to do is in the moment, I tell them to text somebody that they love them. Just text somebody that you love. Now, if you choose your mom or dad or your son or your daughter or your wife or your husband, that's easy. That's the easy one. But if that's the one you choose, just realize you picked easy. Choose somebody that you may not have talked to in a couple of years. Choose somebody that you may have to apologize to. Choose somebody that you've been really wanting to do this, but you've been talked out of it. You've allowed that internal voice in your head to talk you out of things that are good for you. I did this in Maine. I spoke at the International Bullying Conference in Maine a couple years ago, and a 65-year-old man came up to me crying, tears streaming down his face, and said, I just did that with my brother, who I haven't spoken to in 3 years. He said, we're having lunch tomorrow. And 3 years that he hasn't spoken to his brother, who was probably in his 60s as well. And that's tragic. But people, the truth of the matter is, Leilani, by the way, I love that name because my sister's name is Leilani. The truth of the matter is, people want to be or want to have the capacity to be powerful, but they don't. And because they don't, but they're already in positions of leadership, or maybe even leadership in a class as a classroom teacher, they either don't want to admit and seek out the mentoring or the support to develop the capacity to be great leaders, or they just feel like it's too late, that they are who they are and they're not going to be able to change. So getting back to the tip of the spear, the thing that always stands out to me is that I create my purpose. I love my wife to death. I love my kids to death. I love my students and my staff, but they don't create my purpose. I wake up every single morning and I decide, every single day I wake up and I decide, what am I going to do today that's powerful for my wife or my kids or my staff or my students? What am I going to do that's powerful for anybody I come in contact with? I was on the way to work today, just left the gym. I see this lady broke down on the side of the road. I always try to stop as a lady, but I'm always cautious. I want to make sure that she doesn't feel uncomfortable with me stopping. And so I thought maybe I was going to be able to call somebody for her, or I thought maybe I may give her a ride somewhere. And I said, what's going on? She's, I got a flat tire. I have no idea how to change it. And to be honest with you, the very first thought in my mind was like, oh, I got to change a tire. And so it took like 1 second. I got rid of that thought and I changed the tire this morning on the side of the interstate. And, I thought to myself, well, she's already said thank you a couple of times. Or how can I thank you? And I really appreciate you stopping and those kind of things. I didn't want to leave it at that level. I wanted to leave it at a different level. And so I just spent about 3 minutes with her, just telling her that it was my honor and pleasure to be a stop. And I hope she had an amazing day. And I hope she'll, be able to help somebody on her journey. And so when you look at tip of the spear, you get to look at in the mirror every day of what you're doing in every facet of your life. Because I promise you this, and you know this, if you come to a school building and your personal life is not in order, if you can't find joy and peace and comfort in your personal life, it's nearly impossible to come to a school building and give these students and your colleagues what they need to thrive. It's nearly impossible because you're interpreting every single thing that's going on because you're constantly contemplating on what's not happening well in your personal life. And so I talk to my staff about that all the time. I don't mind. I know data, and I speak.
Mike, we have a couple of people that want to make comments. Cammie Bankemper, you want to unmute yourself and make your comment? Anything you want to say? And then I'm going to call on Eric. Hi, Cammie. You're gonna have to find your unmute button. It's like a red button. You're gonna have to unmute yourself, or I can make your comment for you. Okay, she's still muted. So her comment was she loves your slide, the tip of the spear slide. Cammie, if you want to find your unmute and come back on, that's totally okay. Eric, you want to make a comment? Unmute yourself, please.
Sure, Leilani. Thank you, Dr. Steele. This is Eric Gersich with Mind Research. I have a quick question. I'm reminded of the book Gung Ho with this by Kevin Blanchard. Were you influenced by that approach? And if so, how? And I just want to say thank you from one vet to another. Aim high.
Hoorah, hoorah. I really like Ken Blanchard. I'm familiar with Gung Ho, but this particular, to be perfectly honest with you, I sat down one day to create a presentation for the PI conference here in Nashville, and I've spoken and I speak all over the country. I've traveled down to the Caribbean and worked with the St. Lucia police force and education community down in St. Lucia. I sat down one day and I thought, no, I need to go deeper than trying to tell people to transform their lives. I need to personally go deeper. I sat down and honestly, in about 15 minutes, I knocked out this quote, tip of the spear. Tip of the spear is used in general at different levels of the military, as you're aware. So, but I just felt like I was gonna sit down and do something that was at least grab the attention of my participants up front. And I sat down in about 15 minutes and just chose the words carefully. And that's how but Ken Blanchard's one of my favorites. You know, every year I buy my staff a book, and this past year I bought my staff The Coffee Bean. And if you're not familiar with The Coffee Bean, it's an amazing book. It's an amazing book, and I bought about 50 extra copies with my budget, and I give it out to students as incentives. Well, at the beginning of the year last year, I didn't have a English 1 teacher, so I took the coffee book and I took about 50 copies down there, and I taught 2 classes of English 1 until I found an English 1 teacher. And we went through The Coffee Bean, and they absolutely ate that up. The Energy Bus is another book that I've been influenced by. I love The Energy Bus. I was able to hear the author speak and meet the author a couple of times, but the one book that I've most been influenced by in the past couple of years is a book called Resilience by Eric Crichtons. And Resilience is a fantastic book on leadership and just integrity. And I've drawn a lot from that book as well. But I appreciate your service too. What branch were you in?
U.S. Air Force, sir.
Air Force. My son-in-law is a lieutenant. He's an intel lieutenant for the F-15s in the Air Force. He just got to ride on an F-15 on a sortie, a 2-hour sortie, and he can't stop talking about it. So thank you for your service as well. Did the other young lady get a chance to unmute?
I don't see her doing that. But
Hello, can you hear me?
there you are. Hi, Cammie.
Hi. Love the quote and want permission to print it out and put it next to my desk.
Hey, by the way, guys, on this, you can use anything, any part of this PowerPoint you want is free to use. This is a really cut down version because I don't really know. So if you want a fuller version, or if you want anything from me, you have at the end of this presentation, you will have my information to contact me. I'll send you anything I have. Feel free to use it. I just want people to be influenced by what we're doing here.
Yeah, so Cammie, we can get the deck out to you. We'll get the slides from Michael.
Yeah,
that's great. Thank you. Also, what was the author's name of the book, Resilience?
Eric Crichtons, Crichtens.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great book. If you have the ability to purchase that for your staff, you know, over the years people do book studies, but they don't really hold anybody accountable to it. I hold my staff accountable to it. We meet and we talk about it. And so what I've done is gone through the book a couple different times, and I've highlighted it in different colors. And so I sit down with teams of my staff intentionally, and I ask them, what do you think about the quote on page 37 that says, excellence is beautiful but temporary? You know, those kind of things. One moment you're the victor, the next moment you were the victor. What are you going to do next to be victorious as well? What are you going to do that's going to be powerful to the next person? So I always use this example as well. So, you know, you're sitting across the room. My wife and I have been married 28 years. It's different if you've been married longer, if you've been married as long or longer, if you've been married for a while, you still love this person more than anything, but it's different than when you were 5 years married with no children, and now we're 28 years married with 4 children and 3 grandchildren. I love her to death, but what happens in your mind is you're sitting across, you think, I love that woman, but then something happens almost instantly that interrupts you from telling her. And so one of the things I try to do that's intentional and purposeful is anytime I think about something really nice to say, which is often, I either text her or I tell her in person. Same thing with my kids. You know, the research says that for every admonishment, a kid, a student, a child needs 6 to 7 praises to overcome that admonishment. And so when you admonish a student, you should be mindful. I've taken that to another level. If I have to admonish a staff member, I'm looking for ways to reinvent and help that person reinvent themselves when I see them again, mostly for children, but certainly for adults as well. So if I have to tell a child you're suspended for 3 days, then when that child comes back, I want to meet with that child. Now, what you see is districts across the country are saying that they're putting in these programs that say you have to meet. Why did they have to tell you to do that? They shouldn't have to tell you to meet to try to help that child transform and reinvent themselves, and to really be able to feel that you care so much for them because you took the time and the intentionality of trying to help them reinvent themselves after you admonish them. So let me tell you a little bit about my school.
Hey, Michael.
Yes.
This is Leilani again. Before you move on to your next slide, can you address something for me? Because this just sort of popped in my mind as like a major thing that we're hearing as Learning Council, so many schools are struggling with. And that is, in this lockdown moment, which is still happening in quite a few states, and people are socially distanced or they're still at home, they're remote. There's a tendency for both the students and the teachers and even some administrators to go through a period of sort of like feeling, remote, so remote that they're mentally in a momentary sort of depression, right? Maybe they don't recognize it. So what I'm asking you to think about is how can you help people recognize when they're not actually at bat, so to speak, because there's a lot of professionals out there in education, they're struggling and they don't even know how much they're struggling. Like they're getting out of bed every morning and they're trying to keep going, but mentally they're sort of partially checked out. They're not being tip of the spear, right? But they don't really realize it because they're living in sort of like a dreamlike state. It's Groundhog Day every day.
Right.
They don't get to go anywhere. I'm telling you, because I'm speaking to you today from California, where we're still shut down.
Right.
And nobody gets to go anywhere, and it's masks and hand sanitizer for everybody. It's a moment, right? So how do you even recognize that? Can you address that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, there's really no reason to have to recognize it. It's happening. It's happening. It's one of the things that if you think about, if you're really thinking in terms of leadership and service of other people, or being compassionate and passionate about other people, which should be part of the foundation of your leadership. If you're in charge of anybody, or if you just want to be a great leader yourself, that should be part of your foundation, is passionate and compassionate for all people. So it is happening. One of the things I did, we got put on virtual in March, and so we were out for several months before we're coming back to the office now, but still no children. High school's not coming back until January, if then. So one of the things I started doing is I immediately realized that, but let me just stop there, because there were times where I was sitting there and I was the one feeling sorry for myself, and I was the one thinking, how in the world can I help or do something for my staff, much less my students, and then the people around me that expect me to be strong all the time. As a leader, as a principal, as someone who, a lot of times people don't feel like you need that you're not vulnerable to these things, but that's not true. So one of the things I really tried to do during this time was to be vulnerable. And I would have people ask me about current situations in our country and the COVID crisis. And I just made it a point to be vulnerable. And to be honest with them, every time I send an email out to my staff, I always say fantastic, excellent, awesome. I always try to praise them, and I'm very open and honest about my praise individually and collectively with my staff. But one of the things I started doing in March is I go to the gym nearly every morning, every Monday through Friday, and most Saturdays I'm at the gym. So the gyms were closed, and that was my biggest thing. I couldn't go to the gym anymore, and I was like, I could do without the restaurants. My wife loves the movies, so she was struggling with the movies, but my wife's a nurse. She never got time at the house. She had to go to work every day. She really hasn't missed a beat. So I have a lot more respect for her now, but I couldn't get to the gym. So I started running on the streets, and I would make a video of me running, and I would do some kind of 3-minute motivational speech, and I'd put it online for my kids and my staff to see. I would talk about me struggling as well, and me feeling isolated, me feeling depressed. And I would talk to them about overcoming that mindset, so you are able to recognize when you are speaking to yourself in the negative, when you're talking yourself out of something really, really good. And it happens every single day to all of us, but you have to be able to recognize when it's happening to you. Don't go hug your kids and tell them you love them. They already know you love them. No, that's getting talked out of it. Don't go hug your kid in the middle of the mall because somebody will be embarrassed, most likely your kid. And that's exactly why I do it, to embarrass my kids. Don't tell your wife, and this is the difficult one, your spouses, or even your estranged brother or sister or mom, students, that you love them. I get on the intercom almost daily, say, I love you. We do the Pledge of Allegiance. I love you guys, but I'm not happy how our cafeteria went yesterday, or I'm not happy about our math scores. And I talk to them just like they know I care about them. They can tell that there's never a time that they're not going to hear the absolute truth of what I'm thinking about them. That goes to my staff too. Listen, when I first got to Stratford 11 years ago, I looked at the data, and I thought, I'm going to turn my camera off, so go back to my slide real quick. I looked at the data, and I got hired in June, and I didn't meet with my staff until August. So between June and August, I met with a lot of people, parents, students, staff members. Everybody wanted to meet the new principal of this very troubled school. Who's this new guy? And the irony of it is I didn't even apply for this school. I had applied for another school, and they had already filled that position. And so they hired me to come to Stratford. So I didn't even know, but I'll tell you about that onboarding process. The onboarding process was, your secretary's name is Mary Sue, and she has your keys. That was it. Nobody took the time to come over here, show me around, introduce me to anybody, or just to be impressive. As a matter of fact, before they told me my secretary's name and told me that she had my keys, all the people that in my hiring process, all they could do was tell me about how bad the school was. And I just ignored all that because I know that's a betrayal of a lot of people, a lot of good, hardworking people, and certainly a lot of good kids. But having met all those people from June, July, and then coming into my first staff meeting where I would really be in front of my staff for the first time, this is an honest God truth, and you can ask anybody that was there. The first words out of my mouth were, I'm glad to be here. We've got a 59% graduation rate. And the reason that this school is in the condition it's in is because of you, not because of the students. And you could have heard a pin drop because there's no way you can have a 59% graduation rate unless you're not doing your job as an adult. You cannot tell me that 41% of the seniors did not graduate. And so I started sharing data with them, like we have 95% of our kids are African American. Did you know that 70% of African American boys that don't graduate from high school end up in prison? And that's from the CDC. That's a CDC stat. So you're telling me out of 41%, we've got 95% African American. Out of those, let's just say 50% of those are African American boys. So now we got 41% of those boys that didn't graduate. So most of those kids, because of the adults, are going to experience prison most likely. And that's a hard pill to swallow. This past year, we had an 85.5% graduation rate. Now, we also have a 56% mobility rate, which makes getting into the 90 percentiles very, very challenging mathematically because we have 56% of our kids moving around, constantly moving around. I didn't share this stat because I wanted to kind of answer any questions you have, but I'm looking above the camera now, and 87.5% graduation rate for our African American students. Now, that's 5% higher than the district average. Our composite of 85.5 is also 5% higher than the district average. And this is one of the worst, was considered one of the worst high schools in Tennessee 11 years ago. Now, keep in mind, these numbers started going up the very next year. The first year I was here, the year before I got here, there were 4,800 discipline referrals, and there were 68 physical arrests out of the building. That means that not the SROs, but police would have to come up here to stop fights and arrest children. In our first year here of transforming the school, we cut that 48 in half, 2,400 referrals and 0 physical arrests out of the building, 0. And so then you start going down to the data of ACT composites, and we just got some new data. I wish I could find it, but basically we had a 13-point composite. And now we are 17 plus composite. And I just had some data a couple of days ago. We like 30% of our kids are making over a 21, which is just, unheard of. So currently we have 87% minority that are on free and reduced lunch. Now, keep in mind that we've always been close to 90 or 90 plus percentile for kids that live in poverty. And we're still able to turn this school into a STEM school. We're the second, and this could have changed by now because we were only the second STEM certified school in the state of Tennessee. And that was behind a school, and they weren't supposed to tell me, but I knew somebody in the company that did our accreditation. And they told me, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but you scored higher than this other school. Now keep in mind, this other school was a school that doesn't have hardly any kids on free and reduced lunch, and the demographics are totally different. So when people tell me and I've had someone tell me right when I started, these kids can't do this work, that person is definitely not someone that was going to be on my team, and they weren't. They didn't last very long. Keep in mind, I don't pride myself on getting rid of people. I don't pride myself on moving people along. But one of the first things I did in that meeting with my staff, I also told my coaches, I said, coaches, we're $28,000 in debt. On day one of my tenure here, we're $28,000 in debt. I need all your resignations. I want them all before the end of the day. Because what was happening is that this school, people were flocking to this school, lazy and unethical people were flocking to this school, and they were infiltrating because nobody was going to look at their behavior, and they definitely didn't want to look at it themselves. Within the school, I still had about 25% of my staff that were awesome people, awesome ethical integrity at the highest level. They wanted to continue, and those folks, most of those folks have been promoted or they're still with me 11 years later. So I just wanted to say that it can be done. It definitely can be done, but it's got to be very, very, very intentional and purposeful when you go about that. The other day, and let me just share a story with you. There's not a person that applies for a job at Stratford that I don't talk to. They say, well, you say, well, what happens if you don't have an opening? Then I call them back or I email them back and I say, I'm sorry, I don't have an opening, but if you want to come see me, I will sit down with you and help you navigate our district, you know, because sometimes it's hard to get in, just get your foot in the door. And over the years, I must have talked to 50, 60 people that would just move to Nashville and just come see me because I offered. Because the reason I did that is because nobody else is doing it. People ask me all the time, why are you doing this? I was out running the other day, it was raining and it was cold for the first time. And some guy says, why are you doing this? Why are you out here running in the rain? I said, because you're not. And I'm 55 years old and I want to be in the top 1% of anything I do. And that goes for husband, father, friend, presenter, principal. I want to be in the top 1%. He said, well, that's, you know, Mike, that's, are you too driven? No, I'm not too driven. I have a wonderful life. I laugh and I carry on all the time and I can easily shut down when I need to shut down. And here's how I do it. And I want you to think about this. This is just a few things. And we spend the majority of our time in my face-to-face on this. But then when I bring my student panel up and you get to speak to the students who get to interact with us every day and tell you about the transformation and through the leadership that they receive here, that becomes really, really powerful. So again, if you have a problem, it's yours. You know, if it's a problem, if you say, well, Mike, you don't understand my problem. I don't need to. I don't need to. You get to make decisions about your problem, whatever it is. Well, my staff is not supportive of me. Well, then there are things you can do to get them to be supportive of you. Well, this office over here is not functioning at a high level. That's your problem too, if you're in charge of that office. And there are many things you can do that you're probably not doing to be able to help and support that office to start thriving. So no matter what it is, I'm telling you, it's just yours. And the reason that that's important is because you take ownership of it. And when you're backed up into a corner, the only thing you can do is fight or become a victim. And I don't want anybody to ever become a victim. Say, well, you know, sometimes, you know, you can take some shots here and there. No, you can't, because if you take a shot here and there without shooting back, they're going to keep shooting at you. And I promise you, when you start living this way, people will, because they're uncomfortable with how you are living your life and how much fulfillment you're finding out of your different journeys and walks in life. Lead with passion and let others see it. What does that mean? Well, I don't mind telling my staff, hey, I love you guys. I really do. And I don't just stop there because that sounds kind of cliche-ish. Here's why I love you. Because the other day, you guys invited me to do this, and I got to teach this, and I got to interact with these kids. I love that, Miss Moore, because I think you care so much about these kids, and you and I have been together, and I go on for a little bit to make it more personable. So there are things you can do when you walk in the door at night. If you've had a bad day, the people in your house, they don't deserve your bad day. They didn't cause your bad day, so don't give them your bad day. Stop, reinvent yourself in the parking lot like I do from time to time, whether it's my house parking lot or whether it's my school parking lot. I'll say to myself, none of those folks in there deserve a bad attitude from you today. So put on a happy face and get in there and quit whining about the things that aren't going well in your life and go in there and get that done. Excuses are nothing but laziness and self-betrayal in disguise. And I'm gonna let you kind of interpret that. I'm gonna let you kind of think about that. And then the only thing I would ask you is that, what excuses are you making? You know, what excuses are you making? And then start thinking about how they're really betraying you, because that's all they are. Well, someone says, well, I didn't work out because, you know, my leg was sore. Well, you could have gone and done arms, or you could have gone and walked, or you could have done this, or you could have done that. What you've done is you've allowed that excuse to let you sleep in for 2 more hours, and you've missed that 2-hour opportunity to be awesome to yourself or awesome to somebody else. I'll give you a little, I was interviewing a guy the other day that I did not have a job for, but I told, he's one of those guys. I said, well, call me. So me, my assistant principal and I, one of my APs and I, you know, he was sitting there saying, well, I want to be a dean of students, but I don't, the people in the building don't even know I exist. I said, what have you done to let them know you exist? He's like, well, nothing really. And I looked behind him because it was a virtual meeting and he had guitars on the wall. I said, do you play the guitar? He says, yeah, but I haven't had a chance to play much. I said, do you love playing? He said, oh, I love it. I miss it. I said, then what do you mean you haven't had a chance? That's an excuse. Get to playing. I said, let me give you a suggestion what I would do. Write a song for the staff. Sit down, write a song for the staff. Once you get back from a 3-mile run, write a song for the staff and I want you to send it to them. I said, you know, it's going to be uncomfortable to do that. I promise you it's going to be uncomfortable. But I want you to do it if you really mean what you say, that you really want them to know who you are. So he said about 4 or 5 hours later, he emails me back. He couldn't believe, said, Dr. Steele, I grabbed my wife. We both went on a 3-mile run. I haven't felt that good. He said, run, walk. I haven't felt this good in so long. I sat down and wrote a real quick jingle. I sent it to my staff. And what you were saying, Leilani, is that he said, I got so many responses that thank you so much. I needed this more than anything in my life right now. I needed this and that jingle. And then a couple of weeks later, he emails me and says, hey, I got a dean of students job at this other school because, you know, he's just being intentional, purposeful. He's stepping out. He's wanting to develop other people and mentor and himself and those kind of things. Now, this is a guy that emails me now periodically just to say, hey, I just want you to know, thank you for this, that, and the other. And, you know, I get that all the way going back all the way, you know, back 25 years ago from folks that we've worked with over the years when I was living in Florida. Develop, mentor, and train your team and anyone else who wants it. Stop and help that lady change your tire, but don't just stop there. Tell her you care about her. Tell her you thank you and wish her an amazing day. Don't miss opportunities to impact powerfully the people you come in contact with. Establish a very disciplined routine. Own the morning. Get up. Here's your homework, folks. Get up tomorrow morning an hour early and do something for yourself, but something that's uncomfortable for you. Start writing your book, or go run a mile, or do whatever you want to do, but do something that you have been putting off an hour, hour and a half before you normally wake up, and then start really evaluating how that makes you feel and what you're actually feeling in the moment. And I promise you right now, as I'm speaking right now, you got that voice inside your head that's trying to talk you out of it, but don't let it. Never ever quit. Develop that warrior mentality and not only looking forward to hardship and suffering, but inviting it. It's coming anyways. Understand when it's going to get there, understand when it's there, and then you still have that voice in your head, and you have both of them. It's like the angel and the devil. Remember the cartoon? Do it, don't do it. Listen to the angel. Listen to the angel. It's telling you to be positive. Attack that hardship, attack that suffering, and then love, honor, and serve with purpose. And of course, you know, we have gone very fast, and I can't see your faces, and I wish I could, and I wish, you know, we had 300 or 400 in the audience, but you know what? You 11 or 12 are amazing and fantastic, and I appreciate you sticking with me for an hour. Any other questions? We got a few minutes, and I'm going to be on a webinar panel after this, I believe. But if you have any questions, let's hear them right now.
Hey, Michael. So this is Leilani, you know, and I we do tons of these webinars. This is going to go out broadcast to the whole national audience, by the way, just so you know.
Okay.
After we go through and we clean up the recordings, typically we'll get people coming back with feedback right off of our feedback form. But what's really interesting to me is that, you know, you're sort of a ball of fire, and it's a really interesting viewpoint. But what you're basically asking people to do is move from a point of mental inertia to a causative viewpoint. Like, I'm cause over life rather than effect of life. And that does take somebody being that tip of the spear for them. And so one of my suggestions is, and maybe you could talk about this a little bit from what you see amongst your own staff, is that when you put people together, if one of them is sort of that go-getter, it starts to sort of ping around like a pinball, you know, and then the next one sort of starts vibrating a little faster, and the next one starts vibrating a little faster, kind of like when you put a whole bunch of little kids together at a birthday party. The screaming level goes way up, the happiness, the giggling, the running around, crashing into things keeps going up and up and up and up and up until they crash from their sugar high. But typically, somebody has to start that. And then that slowly gets other people out of inertia. So, what have you seen in terms of like that wave? It's sort of like, you throw a rock in the middle of a pond and it starts to ripple out. Somebody has to be that rock, the tip of the spear.
Yeah.
But what have you seen in terms of the ripple out where it's not just you all the time? Because I think that's what people get afraid of. They get afraid of saying, okay, like I got to be the heavy lifter every single day and, put a smile on my face and push all the time. That's ridiculous for a leader to think that. They can cause the ripple.
Well, I think that
What do you think about what happens there? And then I think Cammie wants to speak up. Cammie, you're unmuted too.
Go ahead, Cammie.
Hi. No, I just wanted to say you're truly inspirational. I'm so glad I listened today, and thank you very much.
You're welcome. My pleasure, my honor. Well, getting back to your thought, Leilani, that's one of the defeat things about your mindset, because in my mind, I have to be able to recognize when I'm not perfect, obviously. So I get sick, for instance. So I know that I can't go run or work out today. I know that maybe I might have to depend on my wife or kids more today because I'm not feeling well. And so that's part of your emotional intelligence. It's part of your understanding of who you are really and who you want to be, because we all have a person that we are and we all have somebody that we want to be. And so I always personally feel like I can bear the load, and I don't have any problem acknowledging that the load is getting heavy. I don't have any problem acknowledging that I need some help carrying this load, but that's what makes it so powerful. Everybody, no matter who they are, wants to be happy and fulfilled. Somebody asked me the other day, they said something about appreciation, and there was some research done in Florida that a lot of teachers in Florida were going right above the state line into Georgia because the money was better. And they thought, well, it's because the money's better. When they did some research, the teachers were like, no, it's not because the money's better, it's because we feel more appreciated. And so someone asked me, they said, what do you think appreciation is? I said, appreciation is love and respect combined. So when you learn how to appreciate somebody or appreciate this or that, then you start striving. So I hear what you're saying. No, not all people. Somebody's going to read tip of the spear and they're going to go, I love this and I want to be more this, but they're still going to say, they're still going to be inverted. They're still going to be awesome. They're still going to be leader. They're still going to be doing fantastic things, but maybe the only thing they're going to change is maybe something inwardly that makes them a little bit more the tip of the spear. That doesn't mean they have to be the go-getter, the one that tackles every problem, the one that takes leadership in every committee, those kind of things, because I got some excellent leaders who are introverts and that but are very, very tip of the spear sound. So I hear what you're saying a lot, and I talk about that in my face-to-face about how you can transform this into something that you don't have to be so aggressive or so outwardly sure of yourself and those kind of things, because there are people that really struggle with that and want to really be the tip of the spear without feeling like they have to be the one pushing the agenda on everybody else.
Mm-hmm. And then, I also want to comment that let's just take that whole conversation into the moment that we're in right now. You've been military, if you're hit, right? Like, so you keep taking hits, or keep, eventually it sort of is a little bit demoralizing, right? So one of the more than one superintendent in the last several webinars that we've done, really they've talked about the fact that there has to be a healing moment right now. Because if you can sort of almost work through sort of a little counseling of discussion of the moment and the burden and then through the talking through it, individually, people get over that. Okay, good. I rehashed that 9 ways to Sunday. I'm over it now. They're back to battery, so to speak. They're back to the, grounds of being able to be self-aware and causative in the moment. But if you just sort of like run over it and just go, okay, let's go now, let's go, then they don't recover. They haven't healed from that. And because they keep getting, like right now, we're all living in an environment where it's like, people keep lobbing in more and more change. Okay, now we got to do this. Now we got to do that. Okay, stay locked down. Okay, now we're going back into lockdown. Okay, everybody wear masks. Okay, we got to sanitize. Okay, but now we got to be freaked out about this. And it's really overwhelming, just the outside hits coming in. So
Well,
what have you done to sort of have like some healing so you can get more people past that and into being sort of tip of spear attitude?
Yeah, well, my background's in psychology, and I was a therapist in Florida for years, had my own practice in Florida. So, and then having been in the military and then law enforcement for 10 years, I've experienced trauma is different in that it could, you know, what may be traumatic for me may not be traumatic for you, that kind of thing. But certainly the people, all of us at some level, and then some that more so have experienced a great deal of trauma just from the new environment that we've had to live in for the last half a year. So definitely, and whatever you do, don't read into my quick and really passionate presentation is that I don't check in. I started off in the very beginning when I started seeing the possibility of where this was going. And again, like I said before, you got to build this up. My staff, 99% of my staff know good and well they can come to me about anything. It's confidential, it's private. I've already worked with my staff that have already requested accommodations for when we come back and approve those accommodations. I've just been open and honest. I'll send a motivational song or a motivational video just to kind of, you know, and they'll send back typically, this was the timing for this, and this was great, thank you so much. But it goes back to service. If I have one staff member, and keep in mind, Leilani, I've been to at least 30 suicide scenes. I've been to numerous, probably as many murder scenes. So, but I was talking to some folks the other day, and it dawned on me. I said, do you realize that I'm a principal of a school, and I personally know over 15 murder victims. And if you think about it in terms, most people don't know a murder victim, and most people definitely don't know a murder suspect. I know at least for 15 murder victims. These are kids that I know personally, and then in some of those cases, I know the murder suspect. So that's very traumatic in a sense of most people, 99% of the population can't say that, can't experience that. So I'm very familiar and aware that how trauma works. And you know, actually, I was talking about St. Lucia. I went down several years ago, and I developed St. Lucia's first critical incident stress debriefing team. So I trained all their team and started the whole team and put them in place. And then about a month later, they had a massive landslide that they still haven't uncovered. This was a couple years ago. They still haven't uncovered all the bodies. So they were able to utilize that, mobilize that critical incident debriefing team to help a lot of people. So yeah, I'm very familiar with that. I advocate for more training as a district and those kind of things. And then we do our own debriefings here because I'm trained in it here at the school. And you know, teachers just find it very, very powerful. No, I definitely don't. That's the one thing I definitely don't overlook, because even when we do school safety and I do school safety training, people always overlook the aftermath and the trauma that's caused and the illness that is caused by the trauma that was suffered. And that's the thing I spend the most of the time on.
That's amazing. Well, I'm going to have Eric unmute himself. He wants to make a little comment right here, and then we're going to maybe let you have like a couple minutes to run off and have a break before we start the panel, Michael, because you might need to take a personal break before we wrap you on. We're waiting for a couple of our other speakers to arrive. Go ahead, Eric.
Dr. Steele, I just want to thank you for your presentation. It was outstanding, and it was very timely in our current environment. And just to let you know, I've already ordered all the books you recommended. This was a very well spent and very appreciated, sir. Thank you.
Well, that means a lot. I'm honored to be here and have been asked to do this. I know you're going to enjoy those books. So you have my email address. Just shoot me an email and tell me what you think, and we'll talk back and forth about the books. The Coffee Bean and the Energy Bus. Believe it or not, I've purchased all 3 books for my staff, and they all love. I guess it's probably because the other ones are really small to read. That you can read them in like an hour. But they laugh at me about that. But because Resilience is about 400 pages maybe, it takes a little longer. But those 2 books have had so much impact on that. My staff loves both of those books. So I hope you get a chance maybe to loan yours or maybe buy that for your staff. I think they'll love it.
I'm already considering that. We're getting ready to have one of our first get-togethers in a long time, the end of October, and I think either 1 or 2 of those books would be an outstanding thing to bring us all together. So again, thank you for your incredible gift of this presentation today. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is really interesting. And Michael, like I said, we're going to probably do a big share out of this. We might also make it a podcast to go out to, because we have a separate pod audience.
Okay.
Actually, it's international in scope. It's wild. People convince me to podcast, and now that I'm doing that, I have an international audience, which is wild.
Nice.
So excited about what you're doing, but can you go back to one other thing before I have you take a little break? How did you land in this spot? Like you had this career that went all over the place, and then now you're in a school in Nashville Public. So how did you even land in there?
Well, I was living in Jacksonville at the time, Florida. I was a police officer in Orlando, deputy sheriff in Orlando for 10 years, in Marine Corps for 4 years. Actually, no matter where I was, I always did a lot of public speaking and training, and I love helping people. When I was in the Marine Corps, I was a combat swimming instructor, so I got to help people actually learn how to swim and survive in the water, and that's very, very traumatic for a lot of people and scary because if you are afraid of the water, but to help somebody learn how to survive and swim in the water, it changes their world. So I really got the bug early. My brother and his family were living in Nashville, and he kept telling me, you got to move up here. It's amazing. It's amazing. And we love this part of the country with the mountains and whatnot, outdoor activities. Of course, my wife loves the beach, and I like the beach too. But so I came up, and I just, I liked it. And, they hired me pretty much. They said they had a stack about 12 inches stack of resumes, and I was one of the ones they interviewed, and they said that I hit on all 12 things they were looking for, and they pretty much hired me on the spot. And of course, let's be real. I mean, with my law enforcement and military background, they probably thought that'd be a good fit for a school that was on a top 10 list. And so I get typecast quite a bit in certain ways, but then to answer your question, going all the way back to my tumultuous childhood and those kind of things, and how I remember adults and educators treating me, and how when you're a kid, you don't realize it, but when you grow up, you remember how Mr. Smith or Miss Smith spoke to you, or how they told you would never be anything or do anything and all that kind of stuff. So I have 8 brothers and sisters. I'm the youngest boy, and I went all the way in school, and they're always asking me, are you ever done? I've written 2 books, and I'm like, I'm never done. I don't know what I'm going to do next. The only thing I know I'm not doing is because my wife told me I'm not going back to school. She won't let me go back to school. She said, I've had enough. But I teach at a couple different universities here part-time, and I counsel people pro bono. And it's just, I'm always looking to evolve. I'm always looking to evolve in a different way. And so the thing about it is, Leilani, I speak like this to everybody. I'm not as, I am as straightforward, but in a different way with like my family, whatnot. But they don't ever have to wonder how I feel or what I'm thinking. And just out of the clear blue, all the time, I'll send my kids and my wife and my brothers and say, anybody, hey, I love you, or I care about you, I appreciate you, because that's what I'm called to do. I think we're all called to do that. But again, we get into that mindset where we get talked out of it. And I think it's unfortunately a self-betrayal. It's not something that we probably consciously choose to do, but we unconsciously betray ourselves a lot. And I think that if we can recognize that we become better at every aspect of our life.
Yep, I totally agree. And personally, I think that you're headed for politics in the not too distant future. You heard it from me. My uncle was a senator in California. I have a lot of politics in my family. I worked in legislative offices. There's language that passed into SB 1386 in California. That's a law that I co-wrote. Nice. Politics is not hard. It's just doing what you're talking about. Yeah. But anyway, so let's have you take a little break. I'm going to take over from here and make sure our other panelists are jumping on the line. I'm going to take back the screen from you, and we'll start sharing out.
Every student is different.
Score! 6 por 7 son... I'm done!
So how can we reach them all at their own level? With ST Math, learning is personalized. Each student takes their own path and works at their own pace. When they demonstrate that they've mastered a concept, the student moves on to the next level. Over the course of the school year, a student will solve over 5,000 interactive puzzles, and each one provides animated feedback that adapts exactly to the student's response. This informative feedback creates an environment where students learn by doing and discover that every mistake is an opportunity for growth. As they play, students encounter increasingly rigorous problems, which challenge them to think creatively and apply their knowledge in new ways. Throughout the process, students connect and innovate. Unlike any other program, ST Math allows students to see the math, animating in real time, responding to their actions. Once the student has a conceptual understanding of the math, more traditional symbolic representations are introduced, the type that they'll see in textbooks and on standardized tests. With their deep conceptual understanding and the well-developed patience to persist through new challenges, students' mathematical knowledge shines. And over time, we see that by providing a math program that allows every student to be different, the students, as a group, actually do better. At schools across the country, students are improving in math when they use ST Math, because ST Math makes math visual, engaging, personalized, and creative, so that students can see the math and grow.